Oh my goodness. Is there anything more indulgent than a big, fat, juicy steak? How about when you add a delicious sauce containing brandy and crawfish? You heard right. We're making pan-seared steak with a cognac and crawfish sauce. So one of the most important aspects of really getting that great flavor from a steak is actually getting the caramelization on the surface of the steak. That's where your flavor comes from. So that caramelization either happens over a really hot fire on the grill, or in this case today we are pan searing this steak, so we're going to put it in a very hot cast iron skillet. But the enemy of caramelization is moisture. So let's take a look at this steak. Now, when you get ready to cook your steak, make sure you take it out of the refrigerator at least an hour before you're ready to cook it. And what I've done in this case is kind of a speedy dry aging. Basically what I've done is I've taken the steak out and I've salted it quite heavily. And if you can see that, you can see all of the salt on there, but can you see the moisture on there? Can you see the water? Basically that is surface moisture. That is not the flavor from the steak. That's just excess moisture that's going to keep this steak from browning and doing what we call the Maillard effect, is when it hits that skillet and it starts to really sear up. That's where your buildup of flavor is. So we've had this sitting out for a couple of hours, or for an hour, and I've had that salt on it. Now, in the case of this steak, this is a fairly thick steak. We are going to pan sear this today. You know, grilling, a lot of people are like, don't ever pan sear my steak, we got to grill it. But you can't always grill. So what we're talking about is how restaurants do a pan seared steak. So in this case, we are going to, I prefer a steak that's a rare to medium rare. So we're just going to pan sear this, and it's going to get nice and seared on both sides, and it'll cook to a medium rare on the inside, about 130 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. That's probably 54 degrees centigrade, something like that. So now, if, depending on the thickness of your steak, there is a process called reverse searing, where you could actually, but it's a long process. You could actually, season your steak. You could put it in the oven at a low temperature for 2 hours to bring that up to the temperature that you want the internal steak to be. So you put a thermometer in it, oven thermometer in it, put it in the oven for a couple of hours, maybe at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, to bring that steak up to 127, 130 degrees internal temperature. And then you would take it out and you would then sear it on a really hot cast iron. To me, that is the ideal way to do a thick steak, because basically what that does is it's the inside of that steak is cooked to where you want it, and then all you do is sear it very quickly on the outside to get that, build up that nice flavor. In this case, we're doing something that's a little bit faster, so we are just going to sear this steak, and it's a little on the thick side, so it may be a little rare, but the thing is, you could always cook it a little bit longer. You could throw it in the oven and let it finish cooking. I'm not really a fan of putting the steak in the oven after I've seared it, just because now you're losing that medium rare, that rare to medium rare internal bit. So that's what we're going to do. And so the first thing we want to do is we're actually going to remove all of this excess salt that's on this steak. So that'll be the first thing we'll do here. And then now we're going to season it. So give me just a second and we'll get it nice and seasoned. Actually removed all of the really, you know what, I'm going to use some fine sea salt for this part. And we're just going to get it nice and seasoned. And we want to get some nice seasoning on that outer fat portion, because man, we're going to render that fat, and boy, that's going to just render some flavors, what that's going to do. Still got a little salt left on there. So what we'll do now is a nice heavy dose of some black pepper. You know, remember, it's a thick piece of meat, so it can take a lot of seasoning. So we've got our cast iron skillet coming up to heat, and so in just a second we'll be ready to start searing this steak. But so we simply seasoned it with salt and pepper, and then during the cooking process we're going to, of course, add a little bit of butter to the pan once we flip the steak. And just for some aromatics, we've got a couple of sprigs of rosemary and a sprig of thyme and 2 cloves of garlic. So that'll be our seasonings, that'll be our flavorings. But let's just be honest. The big thing about pan-seared steak is the sauce. So today we are actually doing a sauce poivre, which is basically a pepper sauce with cognac and crawfish and some creme fraiche. So let's talk about our ingredients. So our steps are, we're going to pan sear our steak, get a nice caramelization on both sides. We're going to render all the fat. Then we're going to put some butter and some garlic in there for flavor. And then we're going to remove our steak. And while our steak is sitting out and resting, we're going to make our sauce. So let's talk about the ingredients of our sauce. The first ingredient is we are using an Armagnac. Armagnac is a brandy just like cognac. It has a little bit lower alcohol content than cognac does, but the same thing. So you could use, if you got Hennessy sitting around and you are okay with using that for your steak, go ahead and use your Hennessy. But you could use any brandy, you can use an Armagnac, something like that. So we're going to use that to deglaze our pan. Once we remove our steak, we're going to deglaze our pan with just a splash of this. And just for fun, we may even flambe it. You don't have to flambe it, but you want to cook the alcohol out of it, and flambeing it just helps to get that alcohol out a little bit faster. All right, so once we flambe it, then we're going to add some beef stock. And I've got some beef stock over here that is just been warmed up. So this is some beef stock. You could use chicken stock, you could use veal stock, what have you, that kind of thing. And then we've got some creme fraiche. Now, if you can't find creme fraiche, you could certainly use some heavy cream, and that's okay. You could use heavy cream, but creme fraiche is the ultimate. This is a Normandy creme fraiche, which is it's the best in the world. I'm just going to say it, okay? And we've got some cracked black peppercorns. And I have cracked these peppercorns. I've used whole peppercorns, and I've just put them in my mortar and pestle and gone around like this to just crack them. And this is going to also flavor our sauce. So, we could certainly, use our mill to grind those, but we want those peppercorns to be a little bit chunkier than what you would get out of your pepper mill. So those are our ingredients. Let's get started. This cast iron pan is smoking hot, so if you you can use a cast iron pan or a carbon steel pan. Both of those are great for searing steaks. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of a neutral oil. In this case, I'm using grapeseed oil, and that'll just get us to get our searing process going. But as you can see, that is nice and smoky hot. And let's get that oil distributed. Okay. And a lot of people tell me that they are scared of their pan smoking. When it starts smoking, then things are going wrong. Well, that's not true. That's why you have a vent hood or a vent exhaust fan. So, and it's a good thing to go ahead and turn that on. So we'll turn that exhaust fan on. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our steak, and anytime you are laying something in a pan with hot oil, you want to lay away. So we're going to lay it in, and we're going to lay it away from yourself so the oil doesn't pop back up on you. And we'll turn our fan on, and we're going to let that go for probably 3 to 4 minutes without even touching it. So just do not touch it. You want to make sure that you get a nice sear on there. And when we flip it a little bit, we'll check it in about 3 or 4 minutes, just to make sure it's nice and brown. because again, that is your flavor. It's not burnt. And again, this is a really thick piece of meat. So our pan is smoking hot right now. And after we cook it on this first side, we'll probably turn the heat down a little bit to start just gently cooking the inside as well. So we're going to let this go for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll check it. It's been about 3 or 4 minutes, and so our steak has been searing away, and we haven't even looked at it. So we're gonna check it out. And because this is a little bit thicker steak, I'm probably going to flip it 2 times. I've got the initial side that we're cooking it on. Now I'm going to flip it to the other side, and just to get some even cooking going on the edges. So let's just check it. Oh, look, that's what we want. Beautiful. Okay, that's a nice, beautiful sear. Yes. Okay, and now you can see how the fat is starting to render, on the surface of the steak. So now we'll let that go for a couple of minutes, and then we'll pop it back on the other side briefly, and then go from there. Hey everybody, it's Walter from Artistic Gourmet Adventures. My wife Kim and I own this unique small group tour company where we host groups of 6 to 12 guests for 1-week luxury adventures in beautiful locations throughout Europe and the United States. I have the privilege of being the adventure chef, creating and preparing daily gourmet meals for our guests. So, in this video series, from our cozy home kitchen here in the beautiful Loire Valley of France, we will demonstrate a wide variety of recipes, from culinary classics to originals, as well as covering professional kitchen techniques for the home chef. For more information on Artistic Gourmet Adventures, check our website, linked in the description below. Okay, now our steak has been searing now on the opposite side for a couple of minutes, and let's just talk about doneness and how to tell your steak is done. Well, you could certainly take a temperature probe and stick it right in the center of it, but you don't want to do that, when you're pan searing your steak, because all the juices will start coming out. So, you'll learn over time as you do it how to tell by feel what the doneness of the steak is, and there's a cheat. There's a cheat method that you can use, and basically it involves, using your palm, and, assuming that, this part of your palm is what a rare steak feels like, you can kind of start there and just move on up. So medium rare would be something like that. If you just put your thumb and your index finger together and touch there, that's a medium rare. And your middle finger and your thumb, that's about a medium. And your ring finger and your thumb, that is going to be a medium well. And then your little finger and your thumb together and you touch there, that is what I call a burnt steak. It's way overcooked. So now let's flip this again. Oh, beautiful, nice caramelization on that side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn down my heat just a little bit, and we're going to add our aromatics. So we've got a couple of cloves of garlic that we're going to put in. And I just crushed these cloves of garlic. Don't even have to worry about peeling them. Just put those in, along with a couple of sprigs of rosemary and thyme, or whatever you want to use. And now it's time to add our butter. And this is where our flavor is coming from. Okay. And so now we turn the heat down, just so we're not burning our butter. And that's where the flavor is getting built. Very nice. And we're getting some nice brown garlic butter flavor. So perfect. Beautiful. And just give that a nice couple of shakes there. And at this point, we can also, let's just lift our steak up on the edge, and let's just make sure we kind of render some of that fat on the edges, because that's flavor as well. So, and if you got a high enough side pan, you could lean your steak up against it, but in this case, this is a pretty large cut, so we're just going to put it in the skillet like that. Try to work on rendering that awesome fat. I just call that a free gift on a steak. When you get that extra little, that fat on the edge there. Very nice. All right, let's go back on the first side. And we'll continue basting. And now again, like I said, if you're watching this and you know, when we finish this steak, if it's not done to the doneness that you prefer, of course, you know, you could always put it back in the skillet for a few minutes, or you could throw it in a hot oven and let it continue cooking that way. Okay. From the feel of it, it is just about there. We don't want it bloody, but we want it nice and juicy. Oh, nice. Look at that. Okay, we'll leave that for another couple of minutes, and then we'll take it out and we'll let it rest. Okay, this bad boy is just about ready, and I'm just going to do one last little baste here, and then we will take it out and get on to making our sauce. Fantastic. Let's just take that off the heat. And we're just going to put it in the pan. And now we'll just pour all those wonderful sauces over it. I think I got a little bit of the pepper. There we go. And now we're just going to let that sit and rest. Now, why do you rest the steak? Well, the main reason is that the proteins, when you cook a steak, there are proteins in the steak that they freeze up, they kind of come to the surface, and that's where your moisture is, and during the cooking time. And so when you're resting your steak, that gives a chance for all of those juices to kind of come back into the center of the steak and redistribute themselves. So we're going to let that steak rest. We'll go ahead and tint it for a little bit. We don't need to cover it very tightly, but we'll just tint it and set it aside while we prepare our sauce. We've brought our skillet back up to temperature, and now I'm going to take it off the fire, and I'm going to add my cognac to it, just a splash. And just for fun, let's just go ahead and we'll flambe it. And so when you do that, what that's doing is burning off all of the alcohol, which is what you don't want. You want the flavor without the alcohol. So we just let that burn off. And while it's burning off, it is also reducing the cognac. So you can see here that we literally have, you know, a quarter of the cognac that we started with. So now we'll let that cognac just kind of reduce a little bit more, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a nice syrupy consistency, and that is what we're looking for. Okay. So that's the first layer of our flavor for this sauce. And again, that's all we're doing, is we're just layering different flavors to create this wonderful sauce. So it's the same thing if you're doing chicken, if you're doing fish, you know, add something to it to give it some flavor. In this case, we use cognac. You could use a red wine, you could use port. You know, if you're doing pork or chicken, you could use a white wine, any of those things. It's just wonderful, wonderful flavor. without the alcohol. All right, so now that has concentrated, it's reduced, and that's the consistency we're going for. I don't know if you can see that. Nice syrupy consistency. So what we'll do now is we'll add our stock. In this case, I'm using some beef stock, and the amounts are listed in the ingredients below. But really, once you do this the first time, you'll get the hang of it, and you'll be able to do it by feel. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add stock. Probably, I think I said 100 milliliters on the in the ingredient list. But you know, based on how many people you're feeding and how much sauce you need to make, you know, you start with a little bit more than that. So we're going to add our stock. And what we want to do now is we want to bring this stock to the boil, and we're going to reduce it by half. Now, once we add our stock to this, our beef stock, now we can add our peppercorns. So we've got everything in there, and it's getting nice and boiling up. And we're going to go ahead and put our cracked peppercorns, because again, it is a pepper sauce. So we're going to, we've added our peppercorns, and now this is reducing, and it's probably close to half. We'll let it cook for a little bit longer, let that pepper flavor get mixed in there very well. And then we will add our cream. All right, our stock is now reduced probably by about half. And look at how that is nice, beautiful, got a nice, beautiful glisten to it. That's from the reducing of the cognac and that stock in there. So now let's add we're gonna add our creme fraiche. And we want to whisk this in so that it doesn't curl, okay? So I'm just gonna add it a little bit at a time. Oh man. Look at that. And yes, this is a very, very rich sauce. And at this point, once you start adding your cream to this, might be a good time to kind of taste it and see where we're headed. It's very good. I can tell you right now, it will not need any more salt, because first of all, I used a beef broth from some cooked beef that was already seasoned. So that already had salt in it, and we won't need any other salt. And let's put a little bit more of our cream in there. And now we've reserved a little bit of our stock, or in this case, because it's getting a little bit salty, I might just add a little bit of water to it, because it's going to have a nice, beautiful consistency. And we'll just add a little bit. We can just add a little bit of water to it to kind of reduce the thickness of it and the saltiness of it. And if you're doing a sauce like this and it feels like it's maybe a little bit heavy and needs a little bit of brightening up, you can always add a little bit of lemon juice to it. So let's taste it now. Oh, look at that. Look at the consistency of that. Oh. Okay. That sauce is ready. As you can see, that took us what? I don't know, 5 minutes to make that sauce. Our steak has been sitting around. It's been resting, and it should be fully rested. It's rested so much it's probably taken a nap by now. But anyhow, our sauce is ready. And now at this point, you have a decision to make. You can strain your sauce, If you want to, I mean, you can always, of course, take all your rosemary and your thyme and all that kind of stuff out of it. I'm going to take it off the heat because we don't want it to reduce anymore. You can strain your sauce, or you can just serve it as is. In this case, we're going to be adding some crawfish to the sauce, which, by the way, could be, you know, if you've got fresh crab in season, if you've got some small shrimp that you want to add to it, or you want to cut up some shrimp to add to it, you could certainly do that. But what I'm going to do in this case, for our case, is I'm going to strain our sauce into another saucepan, and then we'll add our crawfish to it. Our sauce is ready to strain, so we're just going to, I'm using a fine mesh strainer, and I've got the heat on low, and we're just going to strain everything into our saucepan. And just press everything through so we have all those incredible flavors. And now if you like the look of the peppercorns, look at that. Look at that. Look at the consistency of that sauce. Oh my gosh, it's just, I gotta taste it. It's unbelievable. So what we're going to do at this point is go ahead and I don't think we need to put any more pepper in it because it's nice and peppery and it's just ready to go. I mean, it would be perfect to use as is right now. But in our case, we're going to add our crawfish and we'll get those stirred around and it will be ready to go as soon as it's warm. Now, I mentioned earlier that if your sauce seems a little heavy, and I don't really know a better way to say that, but just that it seems a little heavy, very heavy on cream, that kind of thing, just needs it a little bit lightening up. You can always put a little bit of acid in it. In this case, you know, you could use some lemon juice. I happen to have limes. I might have had a gin and tonic earlier. So we're just going to use a little bit of this lime juice, squeeze just a little bit in there, and let's stir that around. Now give it another taste, and it does. It just brightens it. It just lifts it right up, and it's just a little bit brighter flavor than it was beforehand. So our sauce is done. Let's plate it up. Our steak's been resting for about 5 minutes, and look at that. Look at the juice that has come out of that steak. Look at that. It's just fantastic. All right, so let's take it out, and let's cut into this bad boy. I mean, you know, we're making a sauce today, but literally you don't really need a sauce when you've got a steak that is that nice and juicy. So let's just take a little gander at it and look at that piece. That's my favorite piece right there. I love that. Okay, but let's just go right in the center here. Ah, look at that. To me, that is a perfectly cooked steak. Nice and medium rare on the inside, nice bark around the outside, nice and juicy. I mean, just look at the moisture in this steak. That's what we want. Let's plate it up. We are ready to give this steak a try. Take a look at this. Beautifully, you know, marbled piece of ribeye, and we've got some nice cooking in there. We've got some nice caramelization on the outside. Nice, you know, pink, almost red on the inside. Is just a perfect medium rare. And now we're got a couple of sides here. We've done some gratin dauphinoise, which you know, in the States we tend to call potatoes au gratin. So we've got that, and now just to cut some of the richness, we're doing a simple green salad. And man, there is nothing better than a simple lettuce salad with a good olive oil and a good extra virgin olive oil, and then a little bit of salt and pepper, and then a drizzle of really high quality balsamic vinegar. And now let's just add our sauce. And again, this is your cognac and crawfish sauce. And you know, this sauce could be, like I said, it could be crawfish, it could be crab, you know, whatever's in season. But I am telling you what, that is going to be a meal to be remembered. And now we're pairing this with a red wine from the central south part of France, the Rhone Valley, actually the Côte de Rhône. And this red wine is a Grenache and Syrah a blend, and it's just perfect with this steak. You could go with something heavier if you wanted. You could do a Burgundy, but this is going to be a fantastic pairing. Bon appetit. We couldn't let this moment end without, of course, a taste test. So let's just give it a try, shall we? So let's just go right in, get a little bit of crawfish, a little bit of the sauce, the steak. Man, really great depth of flavor. I mean, you know, the garlic, the basting with the garlic, and then the sauce with that cognac that's giving it that deep, rich flavor. Man, it's just fantastic. And I tell you what, you know, it's a different taste than a grilled steak. Both are fantastic, and but I tell you what, I'd have a hard time choosing between the two because this is so great. Let's see how it pairs with the potatoes. And this is our dauphinoise, gratin dauphinoise, and we'll be doing a video on this very shortly, so you'll see how we make this. Perfect. It's very nice with the steak and the sauce. And then, you know, we've got some lettuce salad for a little bit of, you know, acid and kind of cutting all the fat and everything. And it's fantastic. And then wash it down with a nice, beautiful red. You just can't beat it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, give us a thumbs up below and hit that subscribe button. It's free. And ring the bell if you want to be notified as soon as we release a new video. Also, let us know in the comments if you have any special recipe requests. We really appreciate you tuning in. See you next time.